Hugh is here, Hugh Buckley,
Hello, Hugh Buckley.
and we've got my mum. Hi, my mum. We've got Lisa's here, and Kevin, Carl, John Fitzgerald, Emer. Hi, Emer, and Con and Apple. So we're ready to go now. This is Guitar Night Live. I'm Daniel Jacobson at Ultimate School of Music. Every Saturday night we do a Zoom webinar with a guitarist of Ireland. So far we're doing Irish guitarists, and tonight's guest is a guitarist originally from Clonakilty who has played with many really renowned acts of Ireland and from abroad as well. People like Mary Black and Eleanor McAvoy and Ray Davies of the Kinks since 2007. He's played also with Gilbert O'Sullivan and done lots of touring, lots of producing, and lots of guitar playing. So his name is Bill Shanley. Hi, Bill. Thanks very much for coming on.
Hello there. Thanks everyone for coming by and saying hello and joining in. That's so nice to see.
And thank you, everyone, for your patience with the link. The Zoom link expired for absolutely no good reason. We tested it the other day, it worked, and tonight it didn't. So that's technology. So we are going to start with, I'm going to ask Bill some questions first and find out a bit about his past with the guitar, and then we'll hear some more playing throughout the night, and you'll also be able to ask questions. If you have questions, you can put up your hand by, there's a button on the bottom of the screen on the menu where you can put up your hand and I can unmute you then and you can ask a question, or you can type it in the chat box or in the Q&A box. So you can do any of those things. If you have a question, we'll take all the questions if you have them. So Bill, I wanted to ask you, you grew up in Clonakilty and you grew up around a lot of music. What are your earliest memories of music?
My earliest memories of music, I was lucky. I grew up in a music bar, a really great music bar. But in the early 80s, when I started playing guitar and I started becoming aware of music, this bar was just really a rocking place. You know, my father was a great piano player, and he was only in his sort of mid 30s to late 30s, so he was really going for it. And there was lots of great musicians that used to come around and play, and so from an early age I was immersed in playing great music with great people and that. So I sort of I got exposed to it, I guess. You know, I remember the first time I started playing tin whistle, then I played clarinet when I was maybe 9 or 10. But I remember there was just guitars around the house. I just remember the first time I picked up a guitar and just made some sort of a chord, and I just said, okay, I'm going to come back to that, you know. So yeah, so I was lucky. I had a very lucky early sort of exposure to music in a really good way, where you're literally out there playing with my father and lots of really great people. So you're just absorbing it. You learn something, you play it the next night, and literally playing 5, 6, 7 times a week. You know, it's really, you know, it was just full on. It's great.
And what kind of music was it at that time?
It was, what was great was it was rock and roll. It was just sort of it wasn't traditional. Like I remember maybe twice there was traditional played in the bar, and I thought that was quite unique to have a music bar that was very, very sort of established and brilliant, but it just wasn't a traditional house. Like my father, he was a brilliant stride piano player and rock and roll piano player. And his music was sort of up to, say, the Beatles, sort of pre-Beatles, sort of. So all those influences from Scott Joplin to the 50s, sort of the Elvis and sort of that sort of stuff, and the modern music, you know, of that day. So I think he sort of set the tone of what music would be played there. And so it was rock and roll. It was a lot of, I wouldn't say jazz, but popular music of maybe of the 50s. You know, he wasn't he wasn't a professional musician. He's a brilliant musician, but he wasn't too serious about what he did either. So it was just music for the people.
Yeah. And were people passing through and playing from all other places?
Yeah, it had a good magic about it. he was playing well. I was playing great. Noel Redding was only getting back on his feet in the early. This was like 1980, 81, 82, and Noel was just getting on his feet to start getting out there and playing and that. So Noel was literally playing in our place at that time 4 or 5 times a week. So he also would bring in a lot of people, like Eric Bell used to come a lot, and you stay in our place all the time. Like Paul Brady used to come down a little bit, Tom McGuinness from McGuinness Flint and Man, like all great old friends of Noel's from England, basically. Status Quo came down. Some of them came down one night. They were playing a couple of nights in City Hall in Cork, a Friday night and a Sunday night. I went up with Noel on a Friday. A lot of them came down on Saturday. It was just a buzzing, and still is, a great music house, you know.
Yeah. And was there trad as well going on?
In Clonakilty, yes. Like there was great traditional houses, but not in their bar. I remember once Paddy Keenan, the great piper, was also living in Clon. He had an antiques shop there.
Right.
He's right round the corner from us. I remember one night, for whatever reason, he came in and out with his pipes. I think maybe twice. I remember playing literally bluffing Irish music. It just wasn't part of that bar, which I thought was great, you know, because it had its own identity, and that's what it was, you know.
Oh, that's really interesting. And so tell me then about getting lessons with Noel Redding.
Yeah, so I was playing, and I was showing that I could play, and I was just picking up off watching people and everything. So Noel Moss, my father, just said to Noel, "Hey, will you teach that fella there the guitar?" You know. So we started with lessons, and I was saying to you the other night, I found that Noel was he wasn't a teacher, so he took me on, and he made it up as he went along, and every week we'd have he'd teach me a song, or we'd have teach chords or this and that. He didn't have a system, but like you'd literally learn a few chords, get into a song or whatever. So he started me, and probably for about 6 months of lessons every couple of weeks or so. But I was saying to you the other night, as we're in my house at home, but this was the book, if everyone can see it. So this was the book. It was like an old school book of mine. So Noel, this was like the diary for lessons. So I found this about 20 years later. My sister had it actually. She said, "I found this book, this blue little," and I knew exactly what it says. "Hold on to it, I will get it off you." So basically, if you can see that this was Noel's like drawing the guitar, the next like drawing out chords, like, and it went on for from like May 81 till June, for about 4 or 5 months. So it was lovely. So basic chords, learn a song. That was sort of it. So you're learning, you know, from him and the music that he played and stuff like that. Yeah.
Brilliant. And so when were you already playing gigs at that point when you were getting lessons with Noel?
In the bar, yeah. When I started, I was allowed, because I was only maybe 11, 10, 11. Actually, no, I was 9. I was born in 72, so I was about 9. So I was allowed to play on Sunday mornings for the first maybe 6 months a year. So, you know, my mother was afraid that it might be, you know, wrong and far, a bit too young. And then I started playing at weekends. And then, look, as I say, my father was still quite young, so there was music 5, 6 nights a week at that time. It was really going strong musically, you know. So I didn't start playing proper gigs around town till maybe I was about 15, you know, where you're like loading the PA and heading off around playing in clubs or whatever, or for functions, you know, with local cover bands or whatever. Yeah.
Sure. And just like in case anyone doesn't know, Noel Redding played bass with Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix Experience. He was the bass player. So
he did, and he basically himself, his girlfriend Carol, in about 1971, I think, he literally threw a dart at the map of Ireland, and I think that was and he decided to come down to West Cork because it had the Gulf Stream drift, he heard. So he literally settled down in Clonakilty and that. Yeah, that was the reason why, you know.
Where was Noel from originally?
He was from Folkestone in Kent.
Right.
Yeah. So he was quite young, you know. He was young when he was with Hendrix. So I guess he was only in his early 30s when he retired and bought a big mansion, sort of a rundown mansion in Clonakilty, and
Yeah.
set up home. And he was brilliant. Like, he was a really colourful character. And his girlfriend, Carol, his long-term partner, was a great singer. And they were a duo playing around there. And people, I think you said it the other night, people would come along and say, I just saw Noel Redding playing in this bar here, or whatever. Like people would be flabbergasted, you know.
Yeah.
But he was just part of the local thing. He was colourful, but he was just, you know, he's blended in. He loved it, and he was, yeah, yeah.
Did he ever talk about playing with Jimmy? Did he
He
tell you
did.
that?
He did. Yeah. He did. Yeah. Like he always did his own music, which was even like at the time of Hendrix, he was playing with his own band supporting the experience called Fat Mattress. So he was more into rock and roll, and he was more into being a guitar player. He was a brilliant rhythm guitar player.
Mm.
So I think his heart really was doing that, you know, doing that sort of music and that. But on special occasions, I say, like, the bass would come out, and he's the same bass, like that jazz bass that he's played with Hendrix. And maybe if Eric Bell was over for a week, or he'd go for it. Or special occasions, he'd really go for it. And he was a brilliant rhythm guitar player, and that he played bass like that, you know.
And did Noel? Do you know how Noel got the gig with Jimmy?
Um, he went up to audition. Like, Chaz Chandler had Jimmy over. Chaz had met up in New York and said, you need to come to London. I don't know exactly, but he got a call to do an audition. And I think, you know, the usual thing, he had a big head of hair, big head of black hair and that. And he was a good player, and Chaz liked the look of him, Jimmy liked, and I think they actually really did get on, you know.
Right.
Mitch the same did an audition and that, you know. Yeah, there's a brilliant, like, for Hendrix people, there is a brilliant book that I got about 5 years ago called Starting at Zero. And Hendrix's nephew is I think he's a video editor. He's a really good editor. So what he did was he got every interview that Jimmy did, every press thing, every word that he spoke, even right back to like letters that he wrote in school or anything that was Jimmy's. And he wrote a book which was his life story from Jimmy's words. So, for example, he talks about the Beatles, you know, from his point of view, and it's not what people thought he said, but it's, you know, so it's really well done. But he was great friends with Noel. You know, he really spoke. I think Noel and Mitch were his ultimate band. You know, like, they were a good power trio.
And I see that behind you there. There's a picture of Jimmy on your wall. So
Yes, there is. Yeah.
you're. Did you start listening to Jimi Hendrix before you had lessons with Noel, or was it after that?
No, I was always aware of that Noel played with this guy Jimi Hendrix. So I was always aware of his music and really, really liked his music. But I sort of had my own sort of Noel, you know, not really. Noel was more into rock and roll and that. But I have to say, Hendrix would be a favorite of mine.
Yeah.
You know, he would be a favorite. Like, his music was so cool. I just think it's a bit more spiritual. Like, it was just psychedelic, and so music from that time, like,
Yeah.
coincidentally, Hendrix for me would have been it's just so many great colors and obviously the playing, and yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it's probably for a lot of us, it's
Very out there, and yeah.
part of our guitar journey listening to Hendrix, so that's why I was kind of asking you quite a lot about it. But moving on then, from after when you moved up to Dublin, then who did you play with, and how did you get your career to the next stage?
Well, I basically, what happened, I finished school, and I wasn't really sure what I would do, and there was an audition going up in Litton Lane for a guy, Liam Riley, who's played with Bagatelle, and so a guy down in Clonakilty, a friend of ours, says, you should go up and you should do an audition. I says, why not? Like, I literally just finished school, and so I went up and went to Litton Lane Saturday morning, and I think the next night I was off playing around the place with him, and I was with him for about maybe 7 or 8 months, and it was good. It was very good insofar as the first band I played with that had monitors or proper PA or lights. It was a real sort of step up, where and I enjoyed it, and I did it for maybe about 6 or 7 months, but then it was just starting to get like, it literally was all over the place all the time, like Donegal, Waterville, so yeah.
And what kind of music were you playing with that band?
Well, he wrote original songs.
Right.
So he Bagatelles. I really like his writing. I really like his music and that. And it was, I suppose it was pop. It was rock. I guess it was. They were a show band in some sense, but an original band. Yeah, very very good.
Yeah. And is around that time were you still practicing guitar? Were you still
Yeah.
learning stuff
Well,
yourself?
yeah, where I grew up, there was absolutely no sort of, I suppose, I didn't have much literacy. Like I couldn't read music. I could play and I could, I didn't have that. So when I came to Dublin, I suppose I was on my own. You're starting out yourself. And I still don't read music very well at all, but I did study that side of things as well, and just get, okay, I better figure out what I'm doing here, what is going on here, and stuff like that. So yeah, and yeah, there's lots to learn.
Yeah.
Always. Mm.
And when you were in that band, would you have been like taking solos, or were you playing rhythm?
No, it was solos. It was pretty much an electric gig, and I remember at a couple of there was a little bit of acoustic guitar, and I remember thinking that I'd no technique as acoustic player. I was about 18 then, and I could play electric. And I'd grown up all through my teenage years playing electric and all that, and I realized like that I just didn't have any sort of acoustic sound, which I think guitar players would relate to that. Like the acoustic is a very different instrument. You have to just start again with it, and you have to treat that instrument in a different way to try and get a sound out. You can't. The more you hit it, the smaller it gets and stuff like that. So yeah.
And
So at that time actually that I started getting interested in acoustic music, or wanting to be an acoustic guitar player, as well as being an electric player. So yeah.
and when you started doing the acoustic more, then do you remember what you were trying to play at that time on acoustic?
I suppose one thing that I'd no technique with finger picking, like none, so I was literally picking up a guitar, playing it like I'd play an electric guitar, and
Yeah.
so I was, yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah. And what happened then after that? Well, you stayed with that band for 8 months, and then you left the band, and
Yeah.
you get another gig straight away.
No. I I started playing with Eleanor McAvoy, who was
Right.
literally starting out around town. Eleanor McAvoy, Noel Eccles was a percussion player, and Noel was on kit. Um, Noel Eccles on kit, and Jim Tate on bass, and literally playing around tiny, like the international place like that. Eleanor was writing songs, and we went to Stark Studios, which is long gone now, and we demoed for a day about 8 of Eleanor's songs, and one of them was her song "A Woman's Heart."
Where was this? Where was Stark Studios?
Dark Studios was on the canal by Ranelagh. So if you come up, say the barge is on your right, come over the bridge, it was in there on the left, just tucked away there. There's a small, it was Alan Connaughton. It was a good studio, small studio, but good.
What was it like recording with Eleanor and those guys? Was it
Well, we literally went
so far?
in for a day and plugged in. We hadn't rehearsed it that much, and hope for the best. There were good engineers there, and it sounded good. I think we had a cassette of 8 songs at the end of it. And I remember, like, I hadn't done a lot of recording. I had done some, but you'd listen to, when you start recording first. What happened to me, anyway, you tend to listen to them a lot. You're like intrigued by this thing that you're able to listen back to, and it was good. It sounded good, but yeah, and that song did stand out. I'm not surprised that it
Did
went
it
down.
lead on to other things after that? After you did that recording,
What's that?
did that lead on to other things with that band?
It did very quickly. Eleanor was playing in Mary Black's band, so Mary's husband Joe. I'll try and be quick with this story, but Joe was putting together a compilation of different women, but he didn't have a song, or he didn't have a title. So he heard the song of Eleanor's. She was playing. She played it backstage at one of her gigs, and so basically they decided to do a duet. We all went in. Well, the same band, Jim, myself, and Noel Eccles went into Westland Studios, and with Pierce Dunn, engineer, Eleanor and Mary, and for a day we just recorded A Woman's Heart. And we also recorded a song, I Hear You Breathing, which is also on that album. Yeah. So therefore, that came out, and that was a big thing. And then Eleanor got a deal with Geffen Records, sort of on the, and that moved it to another level. Then, like we spent a lot of time in the States. We worked with a great producer, Pat Moran, down in Rockfield. Westland. Sorry, we did her first album in Westland. No, Windmill Lane. Windmill Lane. For about 6 weeks, and it was proper budget, and it was great.
And when you went over to the States, then were you touring or were you recording there, or what was going on there?
Like, she signed to Geffen, who were LA based, and they were a big record company. The guy that signed her, Tom Zuta, was one of the heavyweights A&R guys of that era. He'd signed Guns N' Roses and Edie Brickell, and he did lots of success. And so we were there to promote the album, to tour and try and get the thing going. Like, they were looking at A Woman's Heart over here and saying, this is a real hit, and they were saying America should catch on to this song. That's what they were thinking. And we recorded a different version of it, a little bit tougher, and we just promoted the album. It was a very good album.
And so did it catch on over there?
It didn't go huge, but Eleanor did well, and we did a second album and covered a lot of ground in that. Yeah, and she went on, and when I was, I suppose, finished with, she went on and did more albums with Columbia Records, and I think she had really good success, like in different parts of America.
Yeah. So what was it? What were you thinking when you were gone from like playing pubs around Ireland and then heading to tour America? Were you like?
It was good fun. It was very exciting. Like, I was young, like I was early 20s and that, and it was great. It was an adventure. It was fun. You were doing what you wanted to do and stuff like that. And I enjoyed the playing. Like, the band became very, very good. And so it was going the right direction. You did a sort of machine behind you as well, and that helps,
Brilliant. And were you writing your own music from before, or did that start later on?
That started. I was obviously, like probably every musician's always has a sort of an eye on that. I was probably writing bits, but I didn't really quite nail it down at that point. It takes work. I think you have to you have to spend time with it.
Yeah.
So, not to any great degree.
And jumping forward then a bit, so you went on and you played with lots of other people, and then tell me a bit about the recent album that you recorded, Midnight Message.
Okay. Well, it was something that I had been working on for a few years. A lot of time into writing it. I had done an album maybe about 10 years ago called Finger Painting, which was maybe half covers, half original. And in a way, it was sort of testing the water and just see. So I sort of learned a lot from that. So with Midnight Mission, I really wanted to make sure, for me, that I got it right, that I created the effects musically that I wanted to. So what I did was I wrote for the bands that I had in mind that would play it. Like I sort of set up a sort of a brief, which I think people probably should look up when they're writing, as opposed, let's write anything, see what happens. I think I sort of decided, okay, I want to write music about and from the time, say, in the mid-50s when the electric guitar came out. right? And all of a sudden you had a Telecaster and a Broadcaster and a Stratocaster and a Fender Twin. You'd reverb, and that was it. And you just sort of, you know, and it was a very exciting sort of sound, you know. So, and also back then you could have great instrumentals that could be hits and stuff like that. So I really liked that era. So I had that. That was the sort of style that I wanted to look at, do it in a modern sort of way, but look at that era. And then I sort of, what made the writing of it easier was I sort of envisaged a band playing it. So for me, it sped it up, you know, the process of it, you know, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so I would write and I would demo and I would write and I would demo and I would get rid of stuff and I'd write again. So, and what I didn't want to happen was go into the studio with instrumental music with a band and it goes, oh, it's, you know, I wanted to have it energetic, like it was a live band playing it, and we put it down live. It was the basic tracks, and then there was time spent after. So I wanted to have it as energetic and as alive, and you know, that you're all inside in the same room. And I didn't want it to be music I just wanted to keep that there with us. So it turned out well. So it was an easy album to make because I'd spent so much time in the early stages. Recording was really easy, and yeah.
But there's only so much you can learn by talking about it, really. So can you play us something? You're going to play a song that is from the album? Okay.
Well, you know, yeah. But I have a backing track, if that's okay.
Yes, please. Let's try that.
This song is called "Swinging Like New." It was sort of yeah, it had a sort of a Chet Atkins influence sort of thing. But let me know if the level is okay.
Yeah. That's not coming through at the moment. Can't hear anything.
Okay.
Technology.
I know what you know.
It's not on our side.
In Dropbox, sorry, excuse me. I turned off the Wi-Fi. Have it. You hear that?
Yeah, that's perfect. Woo! Brilliant. That was fantastic.
Swinging Like New is the name of that tune.
Thanks so much. That was brilliant. Great idea as well to use a backing track actually, because
Yeah, okay, good.
lets you kind of get proper vibe going.
Yeah. Well, you know, I was saying to you, like, I don't do solo gigs where I sit and play, and that I can do some stuff in that, but I like playing with people or with track, or you know, that's where I come from. Really, is just with bands or with singers or stuff like that. You know. Yeah.
Sure, completely. It's like it's so much more fun playing with other people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like Shane Hennessy, different people like that, or even Jay Kern. You say like just sit down and do like that's solo stuff's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it seems like these days a lot of guitarists, people come through YouTube and Instagram and stuff, and there's a lot of solo or playing over backing tracks. Seems sometimes I wonder, are people playing with each other less than before? I don't know.
Yeah, well, it's a part of music that will always have to be there is collaboration and that,
Big
is
time. So you had a great tone there. Can you run us through what guitar were you playing? How did you get the tone?
well, okay, this is my main guitar, the Gretsch,
Yeah.
and on the album, I also I played the Gretsch for the most part, and then I played I think 2 songs on my Stratocaster, and then another song on this guitar here, which is my first guitar, which I bought when I was a kid. It's a Fender Leads 2 guitar.
Wow.
They came out like 1981, somewhere between a Strat and a Telecaster, and it's great. So I used this on one of the songs. It's got a particular sound in that. But just there, I had been using a Kemper. I didn't use it on the album. On the album is a lot more authentic amps now. But this was just in through a Kemper, and a little bit of delay. I can just show you a few things. That's mainly the patch. Like I've been using it the last year on a few different gigs live and that, and you bring it with you, and you get it into the monitors and stuff like that, and I get an extra monitor, and that's like my speaker cab from the amp. So you literally put this in your backpack, and you can go to any festival or whatever. I don't use it with Ray Davies. He's more sort of amps and stuff like that. But on other gigs, it's working out really well. So I'm just straight into it. It's got some, like I'll turn up the delays a bit so you hear it. I'll turn up the drive. They're very good, that patch is a Vox AC30, and they profile amps, you know, and they're very, very good. They sound great.
Someone asked in the chat there, any nice Kemper profiles to share?
Well, good question. I have the Michael Britt ones, and I probably have another 500 of them that came, or I tend to use the Michael Brits because he's so talked up as being brilliant. So I don't spend a lot of time on getting amps, but I have a couple of AC30s. I have a small Keith Richards Fender, a Fender Champ, and they're pretty much, I have about 4 of them that I use, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, if I'm here working on stuff like at home, I'll go through different amps and stuff like that, and just literally see, you know, probably within 4 or 5 amps that you try to say, yeah, that works well, and that, you know, if it gets right into detail of amps, you know, I think I certainly lose my ear a little bit in that, you know.
Someone else asked, Seamus asked, did you play on the soundtrack Summer in Dublin?
The soundtrack Summer in Dublin? No.
And if anyone has any questions there, just shoot a question into the chat box. So what about acoustic playing? Do you want to show us something that you're doing acoustic wise?
Okay. What can I show you? Well, look, I won't play. So, what I'm saying, I won't play too much about it. Maybe I could talk about it for a second. What I didn't really have when I started playing acoustic guitar was a sort of a sound. I just felt, you know, and I was playing at that stage with people like Mary Black and that, and really, like when you're playing with singers like that, and it's acoustic music, you really need to develop your sound. You know, you really need to just, you know, because a lot of songs are just guitar and voice and stuff like that. So I found my own little toolbox of little tricks that I you know, and I just got interested in, I suppose, acoustic guitar. So I started using a tom pick because I play quite lightly, and this gives good projection, and I stick on nails as well, you know. So it just means that you don't have to dig in as hard, and there's a little bit more projection, and the guitar sort of projects well as well, you know. You know what I mean? So you're just nudging the guitar. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
If I'm playing sort of messing at home, I tend to play a lot of stuff that has where you let the open strings ring. Do you know what I mean? Like, sorry. So, yeah.
Does Philip asked, is that a D35?
Yeah, it's got a whatever 3-piece back.
Yeah.
And a lot of stuff I would do studio wise on a Martin guitar, they just have a great sound, you know. So like a strumming, I tend to use pretty big picks, these picks, because what I find is I have a big bowl of picks, so I was forever sort of picks here, picks there, so I eventually put them all into a bowl. So, but for example, you know, if with this pick here, which is like a Gibson Heavy, has quite a full sound. Then there might be other stuff where you might use like and you hear the difference in sounds. Something really, and if I'm going to the studio, like I'll bring like a collection of, oh yeah, like here's like a really light one. You know, so yeah, you just different subtleties and different picks and different, you know, I use Actually, 13's mainly string wise.
Right.
It just is just quite a full sound and stuff like that. Yeah.
Particular brand of strings you use?
Elixir.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, they're really, really good. I like them because they last long, but I like the feel of them and I like the sound of them. And if you like, some of the Dario stuff is really good, particularly on electric.
Yeah.
But say guitars here that I wouldn't necessarily bring out touring, so I could put on a set of Elixirs on them and like they'll still sound pretty fresh a year, 2 years. You know, they're good strings.
Yeah. Brilliant. Jay Curran asked what songs or players inspired your finger picking style.
Okay. Well, I suppose starting off probably people like Chet Atkins. Um, One other guy is a guy Ron Block, who's a brilliant guitar player who plays with Alison Krauss, and he's a banjo player, and he's also a great guitar player. So he was a big influence. And then like a lot of Irish guitar players, like because I took over from Declan Sinnott, so he is a brilliant guitar player, brilliant picker. So you know, there's lots you sort of absorb from different people, and then Pierre Ben Suzanne, French guitar player, amazing, and yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's great. Um, at the moment,
So I think actually probably picking wise, I'd listen to records and you'd hear that, where you'd hear, it could be like a country record or it could be a folk record like Micheál Ní Dhomhnaill, Irish guitar player, like fabulous. So a lot of it. Donal Lunny, I love his guitar playing. He's a brilliant bouzouki player, but he's also a brilliant guitar player. So you just put all these influences from everywhere and say that sounds really nice. And interesting thing I think about everyone's got their own style of playing. They'll fall into their own way of finger picking, and it's such a personal thing. And but you can sort of take a lot of influence or a lot of from different people on it.
Philip asked,
The main thing actually, if like for years I struggled with finger picking, the main thing for me was when I cracked using a thumb pick and then basically like false nails for picking.
right.
It just meant that you didn't have the thud of your skin. You're trying to get a sound to project. You had these nails which I think sound better,
Yeah.
and the thumb pick just gave you more attack on the lower strings.
And the nails, what kind of nails are they?
Well, I just literally glued them on.
Yeah.
There's a friend of mine, Ian Melrose, who's a brilliant guitar player. He's a Scottish guy, lives in Berlin. Maybe every 3 or 4 years, Ian used to play with like Planet. He's got great solo albums out, and he's a brilliant finger picker. He's worth checking out, Ian Melrose. And maybe every 2 or 3 years, he'll send over like a bag of maybe 400 of them, and they last 4 or 5 years. So yeah, and just literally for certain stuff you'll put them on, you glue them on, and then other times you mightn't use them at all.
Philip was asking there, what year is the D35?
I would say 1996, 97. I bought it from Keynote Music, Lynette Davis. Yeah, so they were up in Harold's Cross. And it's a good one. I've tried others, I've seen others, and you find a guitar. Same with the Gretsch. You play them. It's whether it suits you or it's just a good guitar. But the D35 is a good one. Yeah.
Brilliant. And he said he likes your taste in guitar players like Ron Black.
Yeah. But I suppose like a lot of people wouldn't hear of Ron Black, but he's a great accompanist and. He's just brilliant. Like one of my favorite of his album is a solo album of Alison Krauss called "Forget About It," and the guitar playing is himself and Dan Tyminski and Jim Keltner, the great Jim Keltner on drums, and Pat Bergson, another Nashville guitar player, and the playing is just fantastic. Yeah. So if you want to hear great acoustic guitar playing, that's definitely one to check out. Mm-hmm.
Phillips is a 94.
What's that?
Philip says mine's a 94.
Okay.
Good year. Now, so we kind of glossed over a lot of the period from after when you went to the States touring with Ellen McAvoy and until now. You played with a lot of people and
Hmm.
played all over the place. Is there, looking back at the gigs, is there any that stick out as particularly memorable ones that are like, which ones do you?
Um, well, there probably is. Like, I suppose it's more who you're playing with and stuff like that, you know. And like I've had a lot of great, like, you know, I've had lot of great sort of tours and gigs and occasions. Like Ray Davies particularly was, when I started working with him, it was a real case of strap on the electric and just let's get going. Even though there was a lot of acoustic work involved in his stuff, we did like 2-piece tours and stuff like that. But that was really good in terms of, it was like you were like 15 again, and you're just like, let's get going, yeah. So yeah, look, there's so much of it, really.
You played with Gilbert O'Sullivan. What was that like?
Great, yeah, yeah. I've been sort of playing with him for maybe over 10 years. He's brilliant,
Yeah,
brilliant songwriter,
yeah.
and yeah, really good. We've been out the last couple of years just doing I suppose a solo tour. It's just himself and myself, and it's going down really well. It's
Yeah.
it's just him and myself, and the gigs are going great. You know, we did a couple of nights in concert hall in September just gone, and yeah, it works really well.
I only came across him recently, maybe in the last year, when me and Lisa heard this song Alone Again.
Alone again, naturally, yeah, yeah.
Song
Mm.
came on the radio or something, and we instantly were like, who's that by? That song is
Mm.
very unusual melody and structure to it. And
Yeah, yeah.
found out who it was, and I'd never heard of Gilbert O'Sullivan. I was like, that's
He's worth checking out.
yeah,
He's an amazing melody writer and singer. But like he comes from a great vintage of writers. You know, he's brilliant.
and is that song on the set? You play that one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's had a lot of hits. You know,
Yeah.
yeah. He's had a good career, and he's a really lovely guy. And yeah, I really enjoy it.
Philip said he saw you in Ratoath with Mary Black. He was very impressed with your playing, and the gig in Whelan's just after that was superb.
On my own gig.
Yeah,
Ah, great. Yeah, I did. Well, I did a bunch of gigs last year to promote this album, Midnight Mission, and they were great. Yeah, yeah. Nerve-wracking, but great.
more nerve-wracking playing your own stuff.
Well, yeah. Well, I suppose because you're fronting it, and it was great. Like I enjoyed, and I'm glad I did it. And but yeah, it's a lot more like.
Yeah,
But it was brilliant. It was a brilliant band, and they were good venues. We did Whelan's and Collins in Cork City, and we did Shanley's in Clonakilty. We just did like three shows and that. Yeah. Mm.
so what are you looking forward to playing once this thing's over? What?
It's a good question. It's a good question. Like I really have the summer completely written off, and there is stuff there is a couple of things at the end of August based on last night's announcements. They may go ahead, but really it's there'll be very, very little live work till autumn, I guess, you know. And yeah, yeah, so yeah.
We've got some studio projects.
Yeah, yeah, I do. Like this is sort of where I work, and I have stuff. You know, there's more and more stuff being thrown around, and stuff to be done and stuff like that. You know, so I keep busy. I keep busy, and if you run out of things to do, you can practice or you can work on your whatever.
Yeah,
Stuff, you know, so I'll sort of keep busy, but the live thing will be postponed for a little while. You know.
yeah. And as we were chatting the other day, and I was asking you, would you be up for teaching someone if they wanted a lesson? They could contact you and do something over Zoom. So
Yeah, yeah. Like if I'm not a teacher as such, but if anyone needs a little bit of help, just give me a shout. No problem, you know, or I'll give you a few pointers, whatever.
yeah, so I'm going to put Bill's email there in the chat box, and save that there if you want to contact Bill for a lesson, because once I close it, it'll disappear. So just copy and paste it there from the chat box. I'm going to ask Bill to play us something else to finish up tonight. If you don't have any other questions, then...
Is there any other questions? I'd love to...
There's... we answered everything that came in. If anyone has a question, fire it in. Oh, here's another one. So would you have a particular routine for preparing for a gig or a tour?
Well, I do... I generally, when I practice, it's to practice towards something. Like it's if there's a gig or a tour or maybe a recording, and generally that puts a focus on what I'll do or what I'll practice and stuff like that. You know, you're getting into the zone of whatever it is you're going to do. At the moment, what I did a few weeks and I'm really enjoying is literally setting up with the iPad, the iReal book, and I have a little amp and I plug them both in, and I'm literally just playing tunes from the iReal book, and it's just it's like you get to play with other sort of music in that, you know. So at the moment I'm just sort of tidying up stuff playing wise and just going, you know. But I do tend to practice them for stuff that's coming up. I think that puts a focus, because I think as musicians, you should have a purpose practice-wise. You should practice towards something as opposed to sit there and just see what will happen. Just put, you know, and get, you know, so you get something, you achieve something out of it, or you get some sort of win in it, you know. So, but at the moment, I'm like, I might put on a tune, say like 4, for example, and spin it around like 20 times. So you could be playing for a half an hour and just see where you go with it, and just, you know, and yeah. So I do sort of try to maybe organize stuff that I will practice beforehand. So yeah, so it keeps me interested.
And another question in from Damien. What he says that you mentioned that you initially didn't learn to read music.
No.
What did you practice? What were you working on? What did you think was most important with the guitar?
When I started?
Yeah.
No. Well, when I started, literally, it was you'd play with musicians in the bar, or then you'd hear something as a kid. Say you'd be out with your mates, and they might be into the Clash or the Smiths or whatever. I was into Prince or whatever, or the Cure or whatever. And then like that definitely influenced your playing, you know, like especially when you're a teenager and you're playing with bands around town, like, so you know, I suppose the popular music of the day had an influence on you as well. But then a lot of my mates were into sort of stuff like that, and I was really into sort of like rock and sort of you know, less cool stuff as well, you know, and yeah. I'd sort of, growing up, I had 2 sets of music. One was the sort of the Hendrix and all that my mates weren't in it, and then there was the more popular stuff, I guess. You know.
And what about later on in your career then? Damien's asking, did it change? What was important later on to practice?
Well, I never became a great reader. Like my girls here are like doing the grades, and I'm just about keeping up with them when I help them out and that, you know, and I'm enjoying it because I'm learning stuff that I never had. I'm not a great reader. Like I work with Sibelius, and I'll write out, like for Ray Davies, we did lots of stuff with orchestras and lots of really big production stuff, and I would have been MDing his band. So like I'd have Sibelius new chord charts, and I could put in lead stuff as needed. But I guess when I there's a certain literacy, I think, that you need to have for music. Why did that happen, or why do you do that, or you know, you don't. I don't go right in there to all the different modes of that. But I think certain, you know, whatever you need to get your, because it is a common sort of language, like within a studio thing or with the musicians, you know, and stuff like that. So you know, I just keep pushing up. It's a technique, I guess.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
So. No other questions there. Is there any other tune you could play?
I will. Can I use another track?
Of course, yeah, of course, that'd be great. Yeah. While you're setting up there, I'll just say that it's been great getting the chance to talk to Bill about music, and also to see through approaching the whole webinar thing, it was like we really tested out different mic setups and tried different things. Sound good as it can be for sure.
Was
Definitely,
that? Yeah.
definitely couldn't have got the sound any better than it is. We definitely worked on getting it to be
Well,
best.
also thanks to you for inviting me, and it's a great resource for people. I hope people get stuff out of it, and you mentioned Hugh Buckley there last week as like Hugh did the same thing with the guitar night. So it's brilliant. I'm happy to do it, and I hope people got something out of it. And that's a thank you.
They definitely did. You're very, very welcome. Just before you play there, last thing, Bill was very generous to allow us to. We sometimes we give people's PayPal.me and people can send them money, but Bill generously said we can put our patron fund link instead, which is a fund we have that if you donate money to it, it kind of goes into a fund where people who are doing lessons at our school, if they can't keep paying for their lessons, they can keep doing their lessons anyway. That's what that fund is for. So now at this time, some people, they've lost work, so they can't pay for lessons, but they can just keep doing their lessons. So I'm going to put that link in there in the chat box. And what are you going to play us, Bill, to finish off?
Okay, it's a what's it called? Lucky Strike. It's a tune off my album. So it's a short little tune. So yeah, okay.
Go for it.
Oh, sorry. Thank you.
Great. It's always a lonely one person clapping at the end. Everyone would be clapping, but we can't hear them.
Look, thanks for everyone for tuning in, and thanks for having me, Daniel.
Thanks so much, Bill. Good night.